Hello, this is it, the finale, and then the after the final rose of the most dramatic season ever. I swear this time. Now make sure that you subscribe to my channel, Rose Therapy, so you don't miss a single episode. Are you ready to get going? All right, finally. The most controversial season ever. But let me break it down for you and give you all the twists and turns to help you make sense of it. The night starts out, I'm going to finish in the sequential order, with a knock on the door. Susie's still in Iceland, and Jesse talks Susie into going to visit with Clayton. Now, what the heck? Susie looks gorgeous, right? She's just had a blowout. The sun is in her hair. She looks gorgeous. And one might say, did Susie know that someone was going to come to her door? Of course she did, because the person always has to stay in the location for a few days, as I understand. But regardless, Susie's up for it. Why not? So she goes, and it's awkward. She walks in, and his parents are there. She very nicely says hello to them, but says,
I think maybe we go talk outside, if that's okay.
Of course. What I love about Susie is her demeanor. She's calm and she's composed. She tells Clayton straight up how she felt. You could see she was stewing on this. Of course, she's in a hotel room. How awkward that last conversation they had was. And what I had suggested, that she felt afraid, that she felt awful. She was also shocked. That was the emotion that I caught on last time. And she felt embarrassed, like a stray dog that he was shooing her out, that she was humiliated and that he made her feel wrong and bad, and that her heart was breaking. Now Clayton, to his credit, is sitting with the pain he's caused. He apologizes, and this is a good one for him.
I'm so sorry that I made you feel that way. And
okay, he had explained that he was afraid of losing her, and that he would do anything, and this is what he didn't say before, anything if she would give him a second chance. So good on Clayton. I liked him finally listening. But Susie just has to admit that she's not in a place to decide. I also really appreciate herself and her demeanor and her composure, saying, I'm just not ready for that, but I really appreciate that your words were very genuine. Clayton says, no rush. I just want you to know where I stand. Now, what's interesting here, and I want you to notice this, that throughout the season, right, that I've said Clayton has this anxious attachment style. Now, what's really interesting, though, is the difference between avoidant and anxious, and we're going to get to that later. But if you notice, he only cries alone, right? So in the church with all the sounds, he's crying there. Now he's crying again. But he doesn't do that when he's around someone else. You get the sense that he really shuts down. So this is what we call more auto-regulating. A person who co-regulates is someone who cries when they're around other people. But Clayton chooses to do this alone. So just pay attention to that. We'll get to that a little later. Now, next, Clayton has to face Rachel and Gabby alone. But he does so on a group text, essentially, and breaks up with both of them. No one's coached Clayton on this one here. I don't know, is he thinking he's being more efficient? But he says, my heart is no longer with either one of you. My heart is with Susie. Now, I finally believe that this is his conviction. But the way that he's going about it, we can all say, no. No, Clayton, no, please don't do it. Again, I don't know if for the sake of efficiency, but he doesn't. Gabby says, I'm not having anything with this. She gets up and she walks out. Good for Gabby. She's pissed. Clayton goes to Gabby, of course, with a cameraman, and Gabby, good for her, she gives it to Clayton. She says,
One time it was going to be my decision, which you didn't want it to be, and now it's your decision, so it's easier.
I just love these lines from Gabby. She is so on point about this. Chef's kiss, we call it, right? She's articulate. She describes all the different ways that Clayton could have handled it differently, right? You could have come to us. Of course you felt this way, but you could have talked to us. And I love that she gives him very specifics. And she talks about how she feels that she's felt misled, that she felt like she was collateral damage, and that Clayton made the women feel like it was a competition. This I found fascinating because she doesn't want to compete to be the better woman. She just wants to be loved, and who can't relate to Gabby in this moment? Clayton doesn't have much to say, right? He asks if he can walk her out, and she says, no. Love that. Love, love, love that move. Now, here we then jump back and forth to the live studio, and then here we meet Gabby, who hugs her grandpa. Love that. But we're going to get to the dingbat comment later because that's something that just bugs me. Everyone's there applauding Gabby. She looks gorgeous and she has her moment in the sun. And this is what we oftentimes don't get in a breakup, right? Everyone wants closure. And what do I mean by closure in a relationship? Because sometimes if you can't get closure, you have to give it to yourself. But closure means usually an opportunity to share what happened. So both people, hopefully when they're calm, have an opportunity to share that. And Gabby is on point again. And she explains to Clayton, though she doesn't have to.
When you say love, when you say you love someone, you're assuming responsibility to protect them, to care for them, and to not hurt them. And you didn't do any of those things.
This is what we know secure functioning love is, right? I gave you that acronym, SECURE. You make the person feel safe. You protect them. You don't hurt them. And Gabby said, I take these words seriously as vow, and that Clayton, just like Nick had said the night before, doesn't understand the weight or the power of his words. Now, next we get to, and of course, Clayton can say that he's sorry. He does the best he can to apologize for that. But he's not great with apologies, right? Now, next we get to Rachel because she's still essentially left there, right? And what's really painful for me about this breakup with Rachel and Clayton is we were led to believe that it was going to be Rachel, right? She said she had no reason not to think that it was ever going to be her. And it's so clear how, as I said yesterday, in yesterday's video, she is just, Rachel is all in, right? Her feelings are right there. She really loves this man. And so now he's broken up with her in front of her best friend, and she just doesn't have words. And the last thing she wants to do is be walked out and put in a car. Right? Like there's something just so dramatic about that ending for her. You can't blame her. Finally, Clayton walks her out with low affect again. He's not really good in these moments, right? I think he feels so incredibly guilty that he really shuts down. Now, she's in the car, and this is a really good point that Rachel says herself, shed a tear. He didn't even cry. He didn't even fight at all. Right? Because here's the thing. That's what good closure is. When you feel that the other person is hurting too, then it validates your experience. Like, this all makes sense. But when the other person doesn't validate that and has no affect or no feeling, you get to think like, that was a lie, right? Like, they didn't really care for me at all. How could you have loved me if you didn't fight for me as he was asking for her, and then you have no feelings whatsoever? So I think this is a really complicated thing, and I did my funny Instagram post about this where Clayton's writing in his Dear Diary, I should show more feelings on a breakup, right? And I shouldn't do it in a group text. Note to self, Clayton, not what to do in terms of handling a breakup. But Rachel has some really great points, and I'm sort of just relieved for her as she says, finally I can sleep without all the worry and the ambivalence. So you have to wonder, let's talk about what's happening with Clayton. And I want to get to this attachment wound, the anxious/avoidant. Because as much underneath an insecure attachment style, the biggest fear or worry is fear of abandonment or rejection. And what happens is the anxious person can flip into avoidance to protect themselves, as we saw Clayton do. And that's why I think he puts the walls up to protect himself in these high affect kind of situations. But that's why he flips so quickly, and you see it kind of cold like ice. But underneath, right, he needs validation. He needs understanding. He's said it himself many, many times. So it's still anxiety, but with a flip of avoidance. Does that make sense? And then there's something else here we also call the shame spiral. When the person's feeling shame, as I believe he's feeling right now, he's feeling guilty and bad, that's the flip into avoidance. Because they don't want to hurt somebody else. They would rather just avoid it, and he feels some shame at this point. Now, he may not experience those words may not mean anything to him, but that's what I'm seeing him processing. Now we get to see Rachel on the stage, looking gorgeous, my dear, and she finally has a chance to speak her mind, because that was a brutal ending, right? So Rachel, I love when she's talking with Jesse, she says, mind you, none of these tears are for Clayton. This is for me. And that's what a breakup is too, right? The sadness for yourself that you invested so much and that you didn't get to say what you wanted. It's sometimes we're mad at ourselves, right? It's almost easier sometimes to forgive someone else than it is to forgive yourself. So no bones about it. She doesn't have any feelings for Clayton, but she talks to him one-on-one and says, the way that you disrespected Gabby and myself, I don't have feelings for you. She calls him out. She says that he's selfish. He has no empathy and no tears. And I felt like this was really an empowering moment. And I was glad that Rachel's parents were there for her, right? I mean, to just feel like, girl, we're here. And Tony and his wife were not all that happy with Clayton either. And that felt like the support that Rachel needed. Now, I loved her strength. Clayton again tries to apologize, but here's where he gets it wrong again. He says, well, I should have asked more questions. I'm like, no. I don't think the point was opening someone up, because you do also have to be careful. The more you open someone up and you feign vulnerability, of course, remember, there's power in that. They think that you are going deeper. But what Clayton really needed was courage, right? He needed courage to tell the women that they weren't his number one and that his heart was with Susie, but he just couldn't get there, right? So he dragged both of these women, and they were both collateral damage. So Clayton himself, when he's on stage, he keeps saying, and I've heard it in podcasts too, it wasn't my intention, okay? Let's get clear on the difference between intent versus impact. You can have the best intentions in the world. I didn't intend to hurt you, but my impact is that I hurt you. And so you don't say, I'm sorry if I hurt you. You don't say, I'm sorry, but you don't say, I'm sorry, and I'm sorry I hurt you. And he did get that right when he talked with Susie, but I didn't feel like these last two apologies really sat with the women because they were already so distrusting, right? So watch your intent versus your impact. So many of us are well-intended, but our impact is something completely different. Now, here we go. Now we see Clayton. The women are gone. Finally, woo! He's writing a letter, a diary. He's writing Susie a letter, right? He's got one final chance. You'd think he'd had enough, but now we see Clayton on his way with a ring to a destination, and Susie's reading the letter.
For months, we have traveled across the world, not knowing what was around each corner. Doing so challenged our love beyond what we imagined.
In her sweatpants, and it's like, wait a minute, she's gonna have to get dressed. My God, this seems very weird. But the production will not let it go. It's like they are like a dog with a bone. They're gonna stick to the script no matter what. We will have a final rose ceremony, if nothing else. And here we are. We're in Iceland. Susie's looking beautiful. Okay, this is kind of a little funky. couldn't they go someplace warm? My God, it just feels like this whole thing is so symbolic with sort of the coldness and the coldness. It's just too much for me to take. But it starts out, and Clayton starts with his proposal speech. And I'm like, dude, read the room. I don't think this is going well. And Susie, blink twice if you need a hand. So he's talking about, right, the wild journey that they've been on from the moment you stepped out. I can only imagine me. And, I got the feeling that Susie just wanted to stop him and say, please don't, right? It's like when the person's going to get down on a knee and propose, and you're like, please don't. Because, of course, Susie is taking all of this in. But she is not there. And she said it really beautifully.
I don't feel like the kind of love I have for you right now is the kind of love that you have for me right now. Like, you have an unconditional love of somebody that you want to spend a lifetime with, and like, that's not where I'm at.
And that was really just nice. But she has to leave, and then Clayton is alone. And again, no, I don't think we see any tears at this point. Now, fast forward, Clayton's back on stage. This is the live session, right? The after the final rose. And of course, he admits he's hurt a lot of people. He's feeling down. He's feeling bad. And we know from the podcast, he's been getting a lot of hurt. No one deserves that. He has not, he's hurt people. But again, to his point, he's been well-intended. And we really I just feel like the guy is struggling, right? Now, I don't think, Jesse says, hey, did you feel like you failed? It's like, ouch. Yes, of course one has got to feel that way because this has been the first bachelor. Why it's the most dramatic is this is the first bachelor that has ever been left at the altar with no one standing. Okay, I just want to emphasize that. So when we talk about most dramatic, say, well, I don't know, I kind of predicted the finale. No, we have not seen this before. So I'm going to put an accent on that. Now, Jesse's eyebrow would tell us that something more is coming, but I can't move my eyebrow like that. Anyway, certainly there's more. And lo and behold, Susie walks back in. I'm just going to take a pause right here. Because I have been getting so many text, DMs, messages from you that many people wanted Clayton to feel the pain of all of this and that maybe he would have more growth if he had to sit with that and be all alone. So what can we make of the fact that Susie's back? I had a prediction. I didn't want Susie to have to feel like the producers forced her back. But what's very different for me is how this story rolls out. So I want to also hold space for all of that. Now, through all of this, I have to appreciate, and I said why the finale was so polarizing was because of your own lived experience. Remember, if you have been abused, if you have been traumatized, if you've had toxic relationships, and you have been feeling Susie's pain, then to go back to what felt like the aggressor feels like you're stepping back, right? Like I am moving backwards in time. Why did she do that? One would have to ask Susie because only Susie is the one that knows this, and we find out more information. Let me describe. But that is a tough one for people, right? You deserved better. Run, girl. Get out of that. The question is, if he's done it once, will he do it again? But here's the thing. I also just want to put into some kind of context. I think Susie's a really secure functioning person. I said that myself. I said that, her parents are very solid, very secure. She said that from the beginning. Her own parents said Susie has taught us a lot about relationships. So articulate and just the poise in which she carries herself. So a secure functioning person is going to be able to tolerate and have a lot more flexibility than someone who's had trauma or someone who's had anxiety or someone who's an avoidant type, okay? And that's what we have to keep into perspective, who Susie is. So fast forward, I have been waiting this entire time to hear from Susie herself, because I don't want to extrapolate how she might be feeling, what she might be thinking. I want to hear from her. And because we also heard from Clayton, I want to hear from Susie. So I did. This morning, I listened to Nick Viall's podcast with Susie right after the final episode, and she had a lot of very revealing things. And I'm sharing this with you. I want you to go listen to Nick Viall's podcast with Susie, but I want you to know this as reference point. So Susie, on her own volition, she was flying back to the States, and she was the one who reached out and asked Clayton if he was okay. She knows that she left him at the altar and wanted to see if he was okay. And this is what happened between them, that she's now disclosed to us, that they had many, many conversations. The first one was a 5-hour conversation, both of them just needing to talk about what the heck happened there, right? Here's probably, again, all the speculation about whether she was going to be the bachelorette or not, and what happened, and all the craziness that this bizarre scenario called The Bachelor produces in your own head, that you begin to doubt what reality is, because I've heard this from multiple people, right? And this is where their relationship started, with no pretense, with no context, with no idea, but merely that maybe they would be friends out of that. This is what Susie says. Susie then goes to describe that their conversations got deeper and deeper, and because there was that feeling of love that had happened at the beginning, and again, I think Susie's really good, but what I love about Susie is she pushes back. And in fact, I think Clayton knew that. Like, I thought he was going to be with Rachel because there was a lot of physicality, but there's something different here. And I think Susie's going to hold him to task in a way he hasn't been held before, because they've already been together now for 4 months. Okay. I don't know if they're going to make it in the long term. This is so much stress for a couple to handle. But the depth of the conversations they've had, and I like that they didn't get together physically. Most of it sounded like it was a lot of conversations. At some later point, I think she joined them. Obviously, they get a People magazine spread. Like, how did that happen? We don't know what Clayton's ending is. And then, by the way, here's this People spread. So I'm sorry, that was a bit much. It's like it's kind of in our face. People want to be happy for them, but we want to know that it was Susie's choice. We want to know that she is happy. And I love that she's, this is her narrative. It was from the beginning. I loved that of course, she should have told him what her expectations were, but she didn't let that conversation go too far without saying, hey. And I think she demonstrated nice boundaries, and that's what we can learn from this, right? We can learn from the modeling of Susie about nice boundaries. I would add that if you have expectations, please communicate those. And she knows that too. And that's why she was caught herself in all of this. Did I expect too much? You heard her grappling with that very conversation. So I like that the two of them are there together. Clayton himself said to Susie, this is going to be a lot to handle. We'll probably get some backlash. You don't have to stay with me. And she said, I want to. And I liked that. Susie doesn't talk about anything more than that one situation. And she called him to task on that too and said, listen, I need to know if you've got some anger issues, if we're ever going to have a conversation like that before. But she's good with repair, and so I'm hopeful. It's called earned attachment, and that's what this whole thing is about. I have another YouTube channel too about attachment styles, but what is earned attachment? Earned attachment means one person, Clayton, can be an anxiously attached person with some avoidance tendencies, and he can partner with a secure functioning person, and he can learn from her. He can mirror from her. He learns what it's like to actually see somebody calm in situations when he's flipping out. And he now starts to calm down and become more like her. And he gets healed in that. And that would be the beauty. Now, I would love it if I knew that there was also a therapist guiding them. I don't know that. There was illusion that there are therapists around. I don't know. We don't know that. But again, the challenges are hard for all couples starting out. But from what I heard, it really made me feel much better. It made me feel good that Clayton was with a secure, functioning woman who was going to express her needs and desires, and she calls him to task, and she said he is responding to her needs and her desires, and that he's the best boyfriend she's ever had, who's the most attentive. Who knew, right? So they took some steps back. It was hard for them, and here's the thing. Now it's up to us to say, if you need some little time, you don't have to like applaud them and say good luck as a couple. For me, I always like to see time, right? I'd like to see 6 months. I want to see 2 years from now where they are as a couple. We've seen couples break up before. It's difficult to predict, but I'm glad that they are on the right track. Okay, let's forget all of that and let's start the party, because now I am so excited for not one queen, but 2 queens.
Gabby and Rachel!
And I could not be more happy for our queen, Gabby, chef's kiss, and Rachel. When they announced that those 2 were the Bachelorette, I felt elated. And of course, Gabby said something like PTSD, and I'm like, oh God, girl, no, it's not going to be like that. So crazy though it is that they're going to put 2 Bachelorettes together, but I like that it's not going to be a competition. Who knows? They said there's like 30 men. Is that 15 each? Are they each going to pick? We don't know, and that's part. But I have to say this, I also like that the franchise is being willing to mix it up a little bit, because this sounds a lot like Joe Millionaire, who they had 2 bachelors, and supposedly there wasn't as much competition. And if anyone can figure it out, Gabby with her good articulate skills, and Rachel, who loves with her heart on her sleeve. But if those 2 can put themselves first, the way with all the other crap that they dealt with, I feel like we are in for a treat. And I just love The Bachelorette because we get to really good conversations. And let's face it, Gabby is a girly girl. And they both said, with a friend by my side, it's going to be, what more can I ask for? Now, what I can ask for is let's not call Gabby a dingbat, okay? It's one thing when the grandpa says she's a dingbat, but it's another when Jesse says that. And I just feel like that was a bit of a dig. And I would like to elevate Gabby because she really, for me, just really shined throughout this whole season. She was very consistent. But let's talk about it, because there are rumors that this Bachelorette is actually going to be filmed on a cruise ship too. We don't know if that's for sure, but there's 30 men waiting to get going, and all of this is going to be aired in July. I think it's July 11th when we're going to get to see both of these women. I could not be more excited for them. But my final question to you in my rose analysis, will you accept my final rose? And drop me a question, drop me a comment. I just want to hear what you thought of the entire season. Let me know, and let me know what you want to see more of from me. Catch me on Instagram, where I just went live with Dr. Christy about this. Follow me. I've got more to say on the show because we're all on a journey to find love, and I hope that means you too. So if you catch this video in the month of March, I have a special course for you called Dating with Intention. Because if you're unconsciously dating and you're frustrated, you might need some help. So use my promo code DATE and save $20 on my course. But check out all of my offerings on my Back to Love school on my website, backtolovedoc.com, and I've got so many offerings for you. Because if you're the anxious type, like Clayton, you're like a nervous Nora or Nick, I've got a course for you. If you're the more avoidant type, the independent Isabel or Ian type, I've got a course for you. If you've had trauma, you're confused Connie or Connor, I've got a course for you. And even if you're secure, like I think our Susie is, then you might be passive in love, and I've also got a course for you. So check them out. I've got a course on how to get over your ex. I've got it all because I want to help you figure yourself out, and find the love that you deserve. Thank you so much for being on this journey with me. All the best to you.